When Michael Jordan walked into a dusty pawn shop in his hometown, he was just looking for an old watch. But hanging on the wall behind the counter was something that made his heart stop. His old Laney High School basketball jersey. The same jersey he wore the day he got cut from the varsity team. The same jersey that started his journey to greatness. But this wasn't just any jersey. Hidden inside was a secret that had been waiting 30 years to be found. A secret that would change everything Michael thought he knew about his life. Who put that secret in his jersey all those years ago? And why did they know that someday the greatest basketball player in the world would need to come home and find it? Michael Jordan pulled his baseball cap down low over his eyes. He wore dark sunglasses even. Though it was cloudy outside, he didn't want anyone to recognize him. Not today. Today was just for him. He parked his car outside Danny's pawn shop on Market Street in Wilmington, North Carolina. The old building looked tired. Paint peeled off the walls like old skin. A neon sign in the window flickered on and off. "We buy gold," it said in bright red letters. Michael took a deep breath. He was back in his hometown for the first time in 2 years. Everything looked smaller than he remembered. The streets seemed narrower. The buildings seemed shorter. Even the sky seemed closer to the ground. He pushed open the glass door. A little bell rang above his head. The shop smelled like dust and old things. Shelves lined every wall from floor to ceiling. They were packed with stuff people didn't want anymore. Old watches, broken guitars, wedding rings that meant nothing now. "Help. You with something?" asked a voice from behind the counter. Michael looked up. A heavy man with gray hair smiled at him. He had kind eyes and dirty fingernails. His name tag said, Danny. "I'm looking for an old watch," Michael said. He kept his voice quiet. "Something from the 1970s. For my father." That wasn't really true. His father had been dead for years, but Michael needed a reason to be here. He couldn't explain the real reason. He didn't understand it himself. Danny nodded. "Got a whole case of old watches right here." He pointed to a glass case near the register. "Take your time looking." Michael walked over to the case, but something else caught his eye. Behind Danny, hanging on the wall like a piece of art, was a basketball jersey. It was blue and white. The number 23 was sewn on the front in big, bold letters. Across the chest, it said Laney High School. Michael's heart stopped beating. He knew that jersey. He had worn that jersey. It was his jersey from high school. The same jersey he wore when Coach Herring cut him from the varsity team. The same jersey he wore when he cried himself to sleep that night. The same jersey that started everything. "That jersey," Michael said. His voice came out like a whisper. "Where did you get it?" Danny turned around. "Oh, that old thing? Lady brought it in about 3 weeks ago. Said it belonged to her husband. He died last month. She needed money for the funeral." Michael's hands started to shake. Can I see it?" "Sure thing." Danny reached up and took the jersey off its hook. He handed it to Michael like it was just another piece of old clothing. But it wasn't just another piece of clothing. Not to Michael. This jersey held his whole life. Every dream he ever had started with this jersey. Every championship he won started here. Every time he flew through the air, defying gravity, it all started with this jersey. Michael held it up to the light. The fabric was soft and worn. There were small holes where moths had eaten through it. A few stains that looked like sweat from practices 30 years ago. But it was definitely his jersey. In the bottom right corner, his mother, had sewn his initials in tiny black thread. MJ, just like she did with all his clothes when he was young. "How much?" Michael asked. $25, Danny said. "But for you, since you seem to really want it, let's say 20. Michael almost laughed. $20 for something worth more than gold to him. $20 for the most important piece of clothing he had ever owned. "I'll give you 50, Michael said. Danny's eyes got wide. 50? For that old thing? Mister, it's not worth $50. It is to me. Michael pulled out his wallet. He handed Danny $50 without counting it. His hands were still shaking. "You okay?" Danny asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maybe he had seen a ghost. The ghost of his 15-year-old self. The boy who got cut from the team. The boy who thought his dreams were over before they started. Michael was about to leave when he felt something strange. There was a lump in the jersey. Something was sewn inside the fabric. He ran his fingers along the seam. There, hidden in a small pocket he had never noticed before, was something hard and flat. "Is there a bathroom I can use?" Michael asked. "Right through that door," Danny pointed to the back of the shop. Michael locked the bathroom door behind him. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. With shaking fingers, he found the opening to the hidden pocket. Inside was an envelope, old and yellow. Someone had written on it in faded pencil, "For Michael Jordan. Open when you find this." Michael stared at the envelope. Who had put this in his jersey? And how long had it been there? He tried to remember if the pocket had always been there, but he was 15 when he last wore this jersey. He wasn't looking for hidden pockets. He was just trying to survive high school. The handwriting looked familiar, but he couldn't place it. The letters were shaky, like an old person had written them, or someone who was sick. Michael's hands trembled as he turned the envelope over. On the back, someone had drawn a small basketball. Under it, they had written, "Dreams don't have expiration dates." He wanted to open it right there in the bathroom, but something told him to wait. This letter had been waiting for him for years, maybe decades. It deserved better than a dirty bathroom in a pawn shop. Michael folded the envelope and put it in his jacket pocket. He folded the jersey carefully and held it against his chest like a baby. When he came out of the bathroom, Danny was helping another customer. Michael nodded. "Goodbye," and walked to the door. The little bell rang again as he left. Outside, the sun had come out. Michael stood on the sidewalk, holding his old jersey and thinking about the letter in his pocket. A letter that someone had hidden for him to find. A letter that knew he would come back someday. He got in his car and drove away from the pawn shop. But he couldn't drive away from the questions spinning in his mind. Who wrote the letter? How? Did they know he would find the jersey? And what did they want to tell him after all these years? The letter seemed to burn in his pocket like a secret that couldn't wait to be told. Michael drove through the streets of Wilmington without thinking about where he was going. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight. The jersey sat in the low passenger seat beside him like an old friend he hadn't seen in years. Before he knew it, he was parked outside Laney High School. The building looked exactly the same as it did in 1978. Red brick walls, white doors, a flagpole in front where the American flag waved in the wind. Even the oak trees in the yard looked the same, just bigger. Michael turned off the car and sat there for a long time. He stared at the gym doors on the side of the building. Those doors had changed his life, not because of what was behind them, but because of what wasn't behind them. His name. His name wasn't on the list that Coach Herring posted on those doors. October 15th, 1978, the worst day of his life. Until that day, Michael thought he was pretty good at basketball. He was 5 feet 11 inches tall. He could jump higher than most kids. He could shoot the ball better than anyone in his neighborhood. He was sure he would make the varsity team. Michael closed his eyes and remembered that terrible morning. He had gotten to school early. He wanted to be the first one to see the list. He wanted to find his name and smile, and maybe even call his mom from the school phone. But when he got to the gym, other kids were already there. They stood around the door in a crowd. Some were happy, some were crying. Michael pushed through the group of kids until he could see the white paper taped to the door. Laney High School Varsity Basketball Team, it said at the top. Under that was a list of 15 names. Michael ran his finger down the list. Anderson, Robert. Brooks, Kevin. Davis, James. He kept reading. Johnson, Marcus. Peterson, Carl. Smith, Leroy. Leroy Smith. His best friend had made the team. Michael was happy for Leroy. But where was his own name? He read the list again, and again, and again. Michael Jordan was not on the list. He stood there for 5 minutes, reading the same 15 names over and over. Maybe he had missed it. Maybe his name was there and he just couldn't see it. But no matter how many times he looked, his name wasn't there. Kids around him were celebrating or crying, but Michael couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "Sorry, Mike," Leroy said quietly. He put his hand on Michael's shoulder. "I thought for sure you'd make it." Michael nodded but didn't say anything. He couldn't speak. If he opened his mouth, he might start crying right there in front of everyone. He walked home like a zombie. His mother was in the kitchen making lunch when he came. Through the door, "How did it go, baby?" she asked with a big smile. "Did you make the team?" Michael looked at his mother's hopeful face. He opened his mouth to tell her the good news that wasn't good news. Instead, he started crying. Big, ugly tears that came from somewhere deep in his chest. "Oh, honey," his mother said. She dropped her dish towel and wrapped him in her arms. "What happened?" "I didn't make it," Michael sobbed into her shoulder. "Coach Herring cut me. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough." His mother held him while he cried. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just rubbed his back and let him get all the tears out. "Come on," she finally said. "Let's go up to your room." They sat on his bed together. Michael's face was red and puffy from crying. He felt embarrassed and angry and sad all at the same time. "Michael," his mother said softly, "sometimes God has bigger plans for us than we have for ourselves. Sometimes what feels like the end is really just the beginning." "But, Mom, I wanted it so bad. I practiced every day. I dreamed about wearing that varsity uniform. I dreamed about playing in the big games." "I know, baby. I know you did. And you know what? You're still going to play in big games. Maybe bigger games than you ever imagined." Michael looked at his mother like she was crazy. "How? I got cut from my high school team. If I'm not good enough for Laney High, I'm not good enough for anything." His mother smiled and wiped a tear from his cheek. "Listen to me, Michael Jeffrey. Jordan, this hurt you're feeling right now, this pain, don't let it break you. Let it make you. Promise me. You'll use this to get better, not bitter. That night, Michael lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He thought about Coach Herring. He thought about the 15 names on that list. He thought about all the kids who made the team, while he didn't. And then he made a promise to himself. A promise that would change everything. "I'll show them," he whispered into the darkness. "I'll show them all. I'll work harder than anyone has ever worked. I'll practice longer than anyone has ever practiced. And someday, they'll wish they had put my name on that list." Now, sitting in his car outside the same school 30 years later, Michael smiled through the tears in his eyes. He had kept that promise. He had shown them all. But something else was bothering him. Something about the letter in his pocket. The handwriting had looked familiar. Old and shaky, but familiar. Michael pulled out the envelope and looked at it. Again. The writing was in pencil, faded with age. But there was something about the way the person wrote the letter M in his name. It curved just a little bit to the left. Michael had seen that handwriting before. Suddenly, it hit him like a lightning bolt. He knew who had written the letter. Mr. Whitlock, the old janitor who used to clean the gym after practice. The man who always had a kind word for the kids who got cut. The man who told Michael to keep shooting even when nobody else believed in him. "Keep shooting, son," Mr. Whitlock used to say when he found Michael in the gym late at night. "Stars are born in empty gyms." Michael's hands shook as he held the envelope. Mr. Whitlock had been dead for years. But somehow he had left this letter for Michael to find. Somehow he had known that Michael would come back to this place. He had known that Michael would find his old jersey. But how? And why? And what did the letter say? Michael looked at the envelope one more time. At the bottom, in the same shaky handwriting, were 4 more words that he hadn't noticed before. The truth about everything. The truth about everything? What truth? What did Mr. Whitlock know that Michael didn't know? Michael started his car and drove away from the school. But he couldn't drive away from the questions. The letter felt heavier in his pocket now. It felt like it was full of secrets that had been waiting 30 years to be told. He needed to find a quiet place to read. He needed to find out what Mr. Whitlock wanted him to know. He needed to learn the truth about everything. But as he drove through his old neighborhood, Michael had no idea that the truth would change everything he thought he knew about his life. Michael parked his car at the old playground where he used to practice as a kid. The basketball court was cracked and weedy now. The hoops had no nets, but it was quiet. It was the perfect place to read a letter that had been waiting 30 years to be opened. He sat on the bleachers where his mother used to watch him play. The metal was cold against his back. Michael pulled out the envelope with shaking hands. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. He opened the envelope carefully. The paper inside was yellow and fragile, like it might fall apart if he breathed on it too hard. The words were written in pencil, faded, but still clear. At the top of the page, in Mr. Whitlock's shaky handwriting, it said, "Dear Michael." Michael took a deep breath and began to read. "Dear Michael, if you're reading this, then you found what was always yours. I put this letter in your jersey the night before you left for college. I knew you'd need it someday. You see, son, I've been keeping a secret for 30 years. A secret about me. A secret about you. A secret about that terrible day when you got cut from the team. Michael's eyes got wide. What secret? What did Mr. Whitlock know about the day he got cut? First, let me tell you about myself. I wasn't always a janitor at Laney High School. Before I came to Wilmington, I was a professional basketball player. I played for the Harlem Globetrotters from 1947 to 1952. I was pretty good too. Not great, but good enough to travel the world and play the game I loved. Michael couldn't believe what he was reading. Mr. Whitlock had been a professional basketball player. The old man who mopped floors and emptied trash cans had once played for the famous Harlem Globetrotters. My career ended when I hurt my knee in a game in Chicago. The doctors said I'd never play again. I was 27 years old and my dreams were over. I came back to North Carolina and took the only job I could find: cleaning up after other people's dreams. Michael felt tears starting in his eyes. He had never known Mr. Whitlock's story. He had never known the old janitor had once been a star. I started working at Laney High in 1963. I watched hundreds of kids come through those gym doors. Some were good, some were bad. Some had talent, some just had heart. But in all my years there, I never saw anyone like you. The letter continued. I first noticed you in the 8th grade. You weren't the tallest kid. You weren't the strongest. But you had something special. You had fire in your eyes. You practiced harder than anyone else. You stayed later than anyone else. You reminded me of myself when I was young and hungry. Michael remembered those days. He remembered Mr. Whitlock watching him practice. The old man would come into the gym after everyone else went home. He would turn on the lights for Michael and sit in the corner, pretending to work while Michael shot baskets. I watched you grow up, Michael. I watched you get better every day. By the time you were a sophomore, you were already better than most of the seniors. I knew you were special. But I also knew something else. I knew you were going to get your heart broken. Michael's hands were shaking now. How did Mr. Whitlock know he was going to get cut from the team? The night before Coach Herring posted the varsity list, I was mopping the floor outside his office. The door was open a crack. I could hear him talking to his assistant coach. I heard them talking about you. What did they say? Michael's heart was pounding. Coach Herring said you were the best player who tried out. He said you had more talent than anyone else. But he also said you were only a sophomore. He said the senior players expected to make varsity. If he put you on the team, one of them would have to be cut. Michael couldn't breathe. Coach Herring had thought he was the best player. The assistant coach asked what he was going to do. Coach Herring said, I'm going to cut Jordan. It will be the hardest thing I've ever done as a coach. But that boy needs to learn that talent isn't enough. He needs to learn how to work. He needs to learn how to hurt. If I put him on varsity now, he might get lazy. But if I cut him, he'll come back next year like a man on fire. Michael dropped the letter. He couldn't believe what he was reading. Coach Herring had cut him on purpose, not because he wasn't good enough, but because he was too good. I wanted to tell you right then, Michael. I wanted to run to your house and tell you that the coach believed in you. I wanted to tell you that getting cut was actually a compliment. But I knew. Coach Herring was right. You needed to feel that pain. You needed to use it as fuel. Michael picked up the letter again. His eyes were full of tears, but he had to keep reading. The next morning, I watched you read that list. I saw your heart break into a million pieces. I wanted to hug you and tell you everything would be okay. But I couldn't. I had to let you think you weren't good enough. I had to let you believe that lie so you could find the truth. The letter continued. That night, I came back to school to check on things. I always did a final walkthrough around midnight. When I got to the gym, I heard a basketball bouncing. I peeked inside, and there you were, crying and shooting and crying. You had snuck back into school to work on your game. Michael remembered that night. He had been so angry and hurt that he couldn't sleep. He had climbed through a window and spent hours shooting baskets in the dark gym. I watched you for 2 hours, Michael. You missed shot after shot because you were crying so hard. But you never stopped shooting. You never gave up. That's when I knew you were going to be something special. That's when I knew the pain was making you stronger. Michael was sobbing now. He remembered that night like it was yesterday. He remembered feeling like his world had ended. But Mr. Whitlock had been there. Mr. Whitlock had seen him at his lowest moment. I turned on the lights and walked on to the court. You looked up at me with those red, swollen eyes. I wanted to tell you everything right then. But instead, I just said, "Keep shooting, son. Stars are born in empty gyms." Michael remembered those exact words. They had become like a prayer to him over the years. You asked me if I thought you'd ever be good enough to play varsity. I told you that wasn't the right question. I told you the right question was whether you were willing to work harder than anyone had ever worked before. You said yes, and I knew right then that you were going to change the world. The letter was almost over, but there was one more page, one more secret that Mr. Whitlock wanted to share. There's something else, Michael. Something I found in your jersey that night. Something I've been saving for you all these years. Look in the collar of your jersey. Look for the small bump near the tag. Michael grabbed his jersey and felt around the collar. There it was, a small bump sewn into the fabric. With shaking fingers, he found the opening and pulled out a tiny wrapped package. What had Mr. Whitlock hidden in his jersey? And why had he waited so long to tell him about it? Michael's fingers trembled as he unwrapped the tiny package. The paper was old and brittle, like it might crumble if he wasn't careful. Inside was something small and hard, wrapped in a piece of soft cloth. He unfolded the cloth slowly. In his palm sat a small silver basketball charm, no bigger than a quarter. It was old and worn smooth, like someone had carried it for many years. Next to the charm was a black and white photograph. Michael picked up the photo and held it up, to the light. It showed a young black man in a basketball uniform. The man was tall and strong, with a big smile and hopeful eyes. On the back of the photo, someone had written in faded ink, "Charles Whitlock, 1948, Harlem Globetrotters. Rookie of the Year." Michael stared at the photo. This was Mr. Whitlock when he was young. This was the man who would later mop floors and empty trash cans at Laney High School. But in this picture, he looked like a king. He looked like a champion. Michael turned back to the letter to read the rest. That charm has been in my family for 3 generations, Michael. My grandfather gave it to my father when he left home to find work in the city. My father gave it to me when I left to play professional basketball. He told me it would bring me strength when I needed it most. Michael held the charm up to the sunlight. It caught the light and sparkled like a tiny star. He could see that it was very old. The edges were worn down from being touched so many times. I carried that charm through every game I ever played. It was in my pocket when I scored my first professional basket. It was there when we played in front of 20,000 people in New York City. It was there when I got hurt and my career ended. I thought about throwing it away after that. What good was a lucky charm that couldn't keep me from getting hurt? The letter continued. But something told me to keep it. Something told me it wasn't done helping people yet. I kept it. In my desk drawer for 15 years. I never looked at it. I never touched it. I tried to forget about it. But then, you came along? Michael wiped tears from his eyes. Mr. Whitlock had given him his family's lucky charm. The night I found you in the gym, crying and shooting baskets, I knew what I had to do. I went home and got that charm. I sewed it into your jersey while you were in the shower after practice the next day. I wanted you to carry it with you, even if you never knew it was there. Michael couldn't believe it. The charm had been in Fussy's, his jersey, all through high school. It had been with him during every game, every practice, every moment when he felt like giving up. I never told you about it because I wanted your success to be yours. I didn't want you to think. Some magic charm made you great. You made yourself great, Michael. You and your hard work and your refusal to quit. The charm was just there to remind the universe that someone believed in you. Michael was crying now, big tears that dropped onto the letter and made the ink run a little bit. But I want you to know something else. Every time I watched you play after that night, I felt like I was playing too. Every time you scored, I felt like I scored. Every time you won, I felt like I won. You carried my dreams with you, son. You made them come true. The letter was almost over, but there was one more paragraph. I'm writing this letter in 1981, right before you leave for the University of North Carolina. I can see the future, Michael. I can see you wearing different jerseys, playing in bigger gyms, making shots that will be remembered forever. I can see you flying through the air like you have wings, and I can see you pointing up to the sky when you win your biggest games. When you do that, I want you to know you're pointing at me, because I'll be up there, cheering for you, like I always have. Michael looked up at the sky through his tears. Mr. Whitlock had been right about everything. He had pointed to the sky after winning championships. He had always felt like someone was watching over him during the biggest moments of his career. Take care of that charm, Michael, and when the time is right, when you find someone who needs it more than you do, pass it on. Find a kid who got cut from the team. Find someone who's crying in an empty gym. Give them the charm and tell them that someone believes in them. Tell them that pain can become power if they don't give up. The letter was signed, "With love and pride, Charles Whitlock. P.S. There's more waiting for you if you know where to look." More. What else had Mr. Whitlock left for him? Michael read the letter again. Then he read it a third time. Each time he understood more about what had really happened to him in high school. Each time he felt more grateful for the old janitor, who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. He held the silver charm in his hand and closed his eyes. He could almost feel Mr. Whitlock's presence. He could almost hear his voice saying, "Keep shooting, son. Stars are born in empty gyms." Michael put the charm in his pocket next to his car keys. He would carry it with him from now on, just like Mr. Whitlock had carried it all those years ago. And someday, when he found the right person, he would pass it on. He would find another heartbroken kid who needed to know that someone believed in them. But first, he had to figure out what Mr. Whitlock meant by, "There's more waiting for you if you know where to look." What else had the old man left behind? And where was he supposed to look for it? Michael stood up from the bleachers and looked around the old playground. The sun was getting low in the sky. Soon it would be dark. But Michael wasn't ready to go home yet. He had more mysteries to solve. He had more secrets to uncover. He walked back to his car, holding the jersey and thinking about Mr. Whitlock. The old janitor had been so much more than Michael ever knew. He had been a dreamer, a believer, and a guardian angel all rolled into one. As Michael drove away from the playground, he made a promise to himself. He would find whatever else Mr. Whitlock had left for him. He would uncover every secret, read every message, and honor the memory of the man who had changed his life without him even knowing it. The charm felt warm in his pocket, like it was alive, like it was ready to help him on whatever adventure came next. Michael drove through the quiet streets of Wilmington as the sun set behind the trees. He kept thinking about Mr. Whitlock's words, "There's more waiting for you if you know where to look." But where should he look? What else could the old janitor have left behind? He pulled into the parking lot of a gas station and turned on the overhead light in his car. He spread the letter out on his steering wheel and read it again. Maybe there was a clue he had missed. Maybe Mr. Whitlock had hidden a message somewhere in his words. As Michael read, one sentence jumped out at him. "I sewed it into your jersey while you were in the shower after practice the next day." The next day? After what? After the night. Michael got cut from the team. After the night Mr. Whitlock found him crying in the gym. But wait, there was something else. Michael looked more carefully at the letter. At the very bottom, after Mr. Whitlock's signature, there were some numbers written in tiny print. Michael had to squint to see them. 1247 Maple Street, Unit 23. An address. Mr. Whitlock had left him an address. Michael's heart started beating fast. He pulled out his phone and searched for the address. It was a storage facility on the other side of town. A place where people kept things they didn't have room for, at home. Michael started his car and drove toward Maple Street. As he drove, he wondered what Mr. Whitlock could have stored there. Old basketball equipment? More letters? Photos from his playing days? 20 minutes later, Michael pulled into the parking lot of Safe Keep Storage. It was a big building with rows and rows of metal doors. Each door had a number on it. Michael walked up and down the rows until he found Unit 23. The door was locked with an old padlock. Michael tried to peek through the crack at the bottom, but it was too dark to see anything. He walked back to the office, but it was closed. A sign on the door said, "Open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Michael felt frustrated. He had come so far, learned so much, and now he was stuck outside a locked door. He walked back to Unit 23 and sat down on the ground in front of it. The concrete was cold, but he didn't care. He pulled out the silver charm and held it in his palm. The metal felt warm against his skin. As he stared at it, Michael remembered something Mr. Whitlock used to say when kids got locked out of the gym. Every door has a key. Sometimes you just have to look in places you didn't think to look. Michael stood up and examined the storage unit door more carefully. He ran his hands along the frame, looking for any place a key might be hidden. Behind the lock, under the handle, along the bottom edge. Nothing. Then he remembered something else. Mr. Whitlock always hid the spare gym key in the same place. taped under the water fountain outside the gym door. He said it was close enough to find, but far enough away that thieves wouldn't think to look there. Michael looked around Unit 23. There was a fire extinguisher hanging on the wall about 10 feet away. Michael walked over and felt around behind it. Nothing. But next to the fire extinguisher was a small electrical box. Michael ran his fingers along the bottom edge. There, taped to the underside of the box, was a small key. Michael's hands shook as he peeled off the tape. The key was old and rusty, but it looked like it would fit the padlock. He walked back to Unit 23 and slipped the key into the lock. It turned with a loud click. Michael took a deep breath and rolled up the metal door. Inside the storage unit, Michael could barely believe what he saw. The walls were covered with newspaper clippings, photographs, and posters. Every article was about him. Every photo showed him playing basketball. There were pictures from high school, college, and the NBA. Headlines that said, "Jordan leads North, Carolina to championship, and Michael Jordan wins first NBA title." In the center of the unit was a desk and chair. On the desk was a thick notebook. Michael walked over and opened it. On the first page, in Mr. Whitlock's handwriting, it said, "Letters to Michael, Volume 1." Michael flipped through the pages. Every page was a letter addressed to him. Letters that Mr. Whitlock had written but never sent. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Michael sat down in the chair and read the first letter. It was dated October 16th, 1978, the day after he got cut from the varsity team. "Dear Michael, I saw you in the gym today, practicing by yourself. You looked so sad, but you never stopped shooting. I wanted to tell you that everything will be okay. I wanted to tell you that. This is just the beginning of your story, not the end. But I know you have to find your own way. I know you have to learn to believe in yourself. All I can do is believe in you from far away, and hope that somehow you can feel it." Michael's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Whitlock had been writing to him for 30 years? He had been following his career and cheering him on through letters he never sent? Michael flipped to another letter, dated March 30th, 1982. "Dear Michael, you won the NCAA championship last night. I screamed so loud when you hit. That shot against Georgetown that my neighbors came over to check on me. I told them my boy just won the biggest game of his life. They asked me who my boy was, and I couldn't tell them. How do I explain that I love you like a son, even though you don't know it? How do I explain that? Your success feels like my success. I'm so proud of you, Michael. So very proud." Michael remembered that game. He remembered hitting the winning shot. He remembered feeling like someone was watching over him. Now he knew who it was. He flipped to another letter, this one from 1991. "Dear Michael, you won your first NBA championship today. I watched every minute on my little television. When you cried and hugged that trophy, I cried too. I remembered the 15-year-old boy who got cut from his high school team. I remembered how broken he was, how sure he was that his dreams were over. If only he could see himself now. If only he could know that sometimes the worst day of your life leads to the best days of your life." Michael was sobbing now. He couldn't stop the tears from coming. Mr. Whitlock had been there for every moment, every victory, every heartbreak, every triumph. He had been watching and caring and loving from a distance. But there was something else in the storage unit. something that made Michael's breath catch in his throat. In the back corner, there was a small television and a stack of videotapes. The tapes were labeled with dates. Dates that matched every major game of Michael's career. Mr. Whitlock hadn't just read about Michael's games. He had recorded them, all of them. Michael picked up one of the tapes. It was labeled Michael's first NBA game, November 1984. Another one said Game 6, NBA Finals 1991. Another said The Flu Game 1997. How had Mr. Whitlock gotten all these games? How had he known which ones were important? And why had he kept them all? Michael was about to put in one of the tapes when he noticed something else on the wall. Behind the television, there was a calendar. But this wasn't a normal calendar. This one had dates circled in red. Dates that were still in the future. Michael looked closer. The calendar was for the current year, and there was one date circled that was only 2 weeks away. Next to the date, Mr. Whitlock had written, Michael comes home. How had Mr. Whitlock known that Michael would be in Wilmington today? How had he known that Michael would find the jersey, read the letters, and end up here? And what did he mean by, Michael comes home? Michael stared at the calendar on the wall. The red circle around today's date seemed to glow in the dim light of the storage unit. How could Mr. Whitlock have known that Michael would be here today? How could he have predicted the future? Michael walked back to the desk and picked up the notebook of letters. He flipped through the pages, looking for answers. Near the back of the notebook, he found a letter that made his heart stop. It was dated just last week, but that was impossible. Mr. Whitlock had been dead for years. Michael looked closer. The handwriting was different, shakier, weaker, like someone who was very sick had written it. At the top of the page, it said, Final letter. If Michael is reading this, I'm gone. Dear Michael, if you are reading this letter, then everything happened exactly as I dreamed it. Wood, you found the jersey. You read my letters. You discovered this place. I knew you would, because I've seen it happen 3 times in my dreams. 3 times? Michael's hands were shaking as he read. I need to tell you something that I should have told you years ago. Something about the night. You got cut from varsity. Something about why it really happened. I told you that Coach Herring cut you to teach you a lesson. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Michael's heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. What else was there to know about that terrible night? The truth is, Michael, Coach Herring didn't want to cut you. He fought with the principal about it. For 2 hours. He told Principal Davis that you were the best player he'd seen in 20 years of coaching. He said cutting you would be like throwing away a diamond. Michael sat down hard in the chair. Coach Herring had fought for him? But Principal Davis had a son, a senior named Tommy Davis. Tommy was the coach's son's best friend. Tommy's father told Coach Herring that if his son didn't make varsity, he would make sure the coach lost his job. Principal Davis had that kind of power back then. Michael remembered Tommy Davis. He was a nice kid, but not much of a basketball player. Michael had always wondered how Tommy made the team when better players got cut. Coach Herring was trapped, Michael. He had a wife and 3 kids to feed. He couldn't lose his job, so he made a deal with the devil. He agreed to cut you and keep Tommy Davis. But he made Principal Davis promise that you would automatically make varsity the next year, no matter what. Michael felt sick to his stomach. He had been cut because of politics? Because someone's father had threatened the coach? I was there that night, Michael. I was mopping the floor outside the principal's office when they had their meeting. I heard every word. I heard Coach Herring cry after he agreed to cut you. I heard him say it was the worst thing he'd ever done as a coach. The letter continued. Coach Herring came to find me after that meeting. He knew I cared about you. He knew I watched you practice. He asked me to keep an eye on you. He was afraid you might quit basketball altogether. He was afraid we might lose the best player this town had ever seen. Michael was crying now. All these years, he had thought Coach Herring didn't believe in him. All these years, he had used that rejection as fuel for his anger. But the coach had been on his side. All along. The next morning, after you read the list and didn't find your name, Coach Herring locked himself in his office and cried. His assistant coach told me later that he'd never seen Coach Herring so upset. He said the coach kept saying, "I just ruined that boy's life. I just destroyed the best player I've ever seen." Michael remembered that day. He remembered thinking that Coach Herring looked sad when he saw Michael in the hallway. At the time, Michael thought the coach was just embarrassed. Now, he knew the truth. But here's what Coach Herring didn't know, Michael. Here's what nobody knew except me. That rejection was the best thing that ever happened to you. Not because it taught you to work hard. You already worked harder than anyone, but because it gave you something more powerful than talent. It gave you a story. Michael wiped his eyes and kept reading. Every great champion needs a story, Michael. They need something that makes people believe in them. Your story became about a boy who got cut from his high school team and refused to give up. That story inspired millions of kids around the world. Kids who got cut from their teams and thought their dreams were over. You showed them that rejection is just the beginning, not the end. The letter was almost over, but there was one more page, one more secret that Mr. Whitlock needed to share. I never told Coach Herring what I heard that night. I never told anyone. I let him carry that guilt for the rest of his life. He died 3 years ago, still thinking he had ruined your career. I should have told him the truth. I should have told him that cutting you was actually the greatest gift he ever gave you. Michael felt a pain in his chest. Coach Herring had died thinking he had hurt Michael's future. But there's something else, Michael. Something even more important. The reason I'm telling you all this now. The reason I left you these letters and this storage unit and all these memories. Michael turned to the final page, his hands shaking. You, see, son, I'm not just the janitor who believed in you. I'm not just the man who watched you grow up from afar. I'm something else. Something I should have told you years ago. Something that will change everything you think you know about your life. What? What else could Mr. Whitlock be? The truth is, Michael, I knew you would be special from the moment I first saw you. Not because of how you played basketball. Not because of your talent or your work ethic. I knew you would be special because... The page ended there. Michael frantically looked for the rest of the letter. There had to be more. Mr. Whitlock couldn't stop there. Not when he was about to reveal the biggest secret of all. Michael searched through all the papers on the desk. He looked through every drawer. He checked every box in the storage unit. But there was no more of the letter. It ended right at the most important part. But then Michael noticed something. Taped to the bottom of the desk drawer was a small key. Different from the first key. This one was newer, shinier, and attached to it was a piece of paper with an address. Willow Creek Cemetery, Section D, Plot 47. Mr. Whitlock's grave. He wanted Michael to come to his grave. But why? What was waiting for him there? And what was Mr. Whitlock about to tell him before? The letter ended. Michael had a feeling that the biggest secret of all was still waiting to be discovered. Michael locked up the storage unit and drove through the dark streets toward Willow Creek Cemetery. The new key felt heavy in his pocket. His mind raced with questions. What had Mr. Whitlock been about to tell him? Why did the letter end right at the most important part? The cemetery gates were locked when Michael arrived. A sign said, "Closed, from sunset to sunrise." But Michael had come too far to stop now. He parked his car and walked around the fence until he found a place where he could climb over. The cemetery was dark and quiet. Only the moon gave him light to see. Michael used his phone's flashlight to read the section markers. Section A, Section B, Section C. Finally, he found Section D. He walked between the rows of headstones, reading names and numbers. Plot 44, Plot 45, Plot 46. There it was. Plot 47. A simple gray stone with words carved deep into the granite. Charles Whitlock, 1925-1998. Beloved Father. Father? Michael stared at the word. Mr. Whitlock had been a father? In all the years Michael knew him, the old janitor had never mentioned having children. He had always seemed so alone. Michael knelt down next to the grave. The grass was soft and recently cut. Someone had been taking care of this place. Fresh flowers sat in a small vase next to the headstone. White roses that still smelled sweet. "I'm here, Mr. Whitlock," Michael whispered. "I found everything. The letters, the storage unit, the videos, but I need to know the rest. I need to know what you were going to tell me." The wind blew through the trees above him. For a moment, Michael thought he heard a voice, but it was just the wind. Michael looked around the gravesite for anything that might be hidden there. He felt along the back of the headstone. He checked under the flower vase. He even dug a little bit in the soft dirt with his hands. Nothing. Michael sat back on his heels, frustrated. He had followed every clue, found every hidden message. But the most important secret was still missing. What had Mr. Whitlock been about to tell him? Then Michael remembered something. The key in his pocket. He hadn't used it yet. But what? Could it open in a cemetery? Michael stood up and looked around. About 50 feet away, he saw a small building. It looked like a maintenance shed where they kept lawn mowers and tools. Michael walked over to it. The door had a small lock. Michael tried the key. It fit perfectly. Inside the shed, Michael found something unexpected. In the corner, covered by an old tarp, was a small chest, the kind people used to store important papers and family treasures. Michael pulled off the tarp and opened the chest. Inside were more letters, more photographs, and something that made his heart skip a beat. At the bottom of the chest was a birth certificate. Michael picked up the certificate and held his phone light over it. The name on the certificate was Michael Jeffrey Jordan, but that wasn't what made Michael's hands shake. It was the name listed as Father. The certificate said, Father, Charles Whitlock. Michael dropped the paper like it was on fire. That was impossible. His father was James Jordan. James Jordan had raised him, loved him, taught him how to be a man. James Jordan was his real father. But the birth certificate was official. It had government stamps and signatures. It looked real. Michael picked up one of the letters from the chest. This one was different from all the others. It was written on different paper, newer paper. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. Dear Michael, if you are reading this, then you found the birth certificate. I know this must be confusing. I know this must hurt. But please read this letter before you judge me. Please let me explain. Michael's legs felt weak. He sat down on an old crate and kept reading. I was 17 years old when you were born, Michael. Just a kid myself. Your mother was 16. We were both scared and poor and didn't know how to take care of a baby. We weren't married. Our families were ashamed of us. Michael's real parents were teenagers. His whole life had been a lie. We made the hardest decision two young people can make. We decided to give you up for adoption. We wanted you to have a better life than we could give you. We wanted you to have parents who were ready to love you the way you deserved to be loved. The letter continued. James and Dolores Jordan were the answer to our prayers. They were good people who had been trying to have children for years. They promised to love you and raise you and give you every opportunity in life. When I handed you to them, I knew I was giving you the greatest gift I could give, a real family. Michael was crying now. His whole identity was crashing down around him. James and Dolores. Jordan weren't his biological parents. I made them. Promise never to tell you about me unless something happened to them. I didn't want to confuse you. I didn't want to hurt you. They were your real parents in every way that mattered. I was just the boy who helped bring you into the world. But there was more to the letter, much more. I moved to Wilmington when you were in middle school. I heard that a boy named Michael Jordan was playing basketball there. I hoped it might be you. When I saw you for the first time in that gym, I knew immediately. You had my eyes. You had my hands. You had my love for basketball. Mr. Whitlock had known Michael was his son all along. I got the job as a janitor so I could watch you grow up. I knew I couldn't be your father. James. Jordan was your father. But I could love you from far away. I could protect you without you knowing. I could be proud of you even if you never knew who I really was. Michael understood now. Everything made sense. Why Mr. Whitlock had cared so much. Why he had saved every newspaper clipping. Why he had written all those letters. Watching you succeed was the greatest joy of my life, Michael. Every championship you won, I felt like I won too. Every time you pointed to the sky, I felt like you were pointing at me. Being your secret father was enough for me. It was more than I deserved. The letter was almost over, but there was one more thing Mr. Whitlock needed to say. I'm telling you this now because I want you to understand something important. You are not just Michael Jordan, the basketball player. You are not just Michael Jordan, the champion. You are my son. You carry my blood, my dreams, my hope for the future. And that means you have a responsibility. What responsibility? Find the other kids like you were, Michael. Find the ones who got cut from the team. Find the ones who think they're not good enough. Be their secret father the way I was yours. Love them from far away. Believe in them when they can't believe in themselves. The letter ended with words that broke Michael's heart. I love you, son. I have always loved you, and I will love you forever, even from heaven. Your secret father. Charles Whitlock. Michael sat in the dark shed, holding the letter and crying like he hadn't cried since he was 15 years old. His whole life had been different than he thought. The man he thought was a kind janitor was actually his biological father. The man who had believed in him from the beginning was his own flesh and blood. But there was still one more mystery to solve. Why had Mr. Whitlock left this for him to find now? What did he want Michael to do with this information? Michael wiped his tears and looked through the rest of the chest. Under the birth certificate and letters, he found something that made him gasp. It was a small metal key attached to a piece of paper. The paper had another address written on it: 1247 Maple Street, Storage Unit 47. Another storage unit? But Michael had already been to Unit 23. What could be in Unit 47? Michael locked the shed and climbed back over the cemetery fence. As he drove back to the storage facility, his mind spun with everything he had learned. Charles Whitlock was his biological father. The man who had cleaned floors and emptied trash cans was the same man who had given him life. When Michael got back to safekeep storage, he found Unit 47 3 rows over from Unit 23. This door was newer, and the lock was different. Michael used the key from the chest, and the door rolled up easily. What he saw inside took his breath away. This wasn't just a storage unit. Mr. Whitlock had turned it into a small apartment. There was a bed, a desk, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom. On the walls were hundreds of photographs of Michael throughout his life. Not just basketball photos, but pictures of him as a baby, as a young boy, as a teenager. How did Mr. Whitlock get all these pictures? Michael walked closer to look at the photos. In one corner, he saw baby pictures he had never seen before. Pictures of himself as a newborn in the hospital. Pictures of a young man and woman holding him. The man looked just like Mr. Whitlock, only much younger. Michael's biological parents, his real mother and father. On the desk was a thick photo album. Michael opened it and found pictures documenting his entire life. His first steps, his first day of school, his first basketball game, every birthday, every Christmas, every important moment. But these weren't pictures that James and Dolores Jordan had taken. These were taken from far away, like someone had been watching and photographing from a distance. Mr. Whitlock had been following Michael his whole life. Not just watching him play basketball, watching him grow up, watching him become a man. Michael sat down on the bed and opened a journal that was lying on the nightstand. The first entry was dated 1963, the year Michael was born. Today I became a father and lost a son at the same time. I held Michael for 10 minutes before I had to give him away. He looked at me with these big brown eyes, like he was trying to remember my face. I promised him I would watch over him always, even if he never knew it was me. Michael turned the pages. There were entries for every year of his life. Age 5. Michael started kindergarten today. I followed the school bus from far away and watched him walk into the building. He looked so small and brave. James Jordan walked him to the door and gave him a hug. I'm glad Michael has such a good father. Age 10. Michael scored 15 points in his first organized basketball game. I sat in the back row wearing sunglasses, so nobody would recognize me. When he made his first basket, I wanted to stand up and cheer, but I stayed quiet. That's James Jordan's job, not mine. Age 15. Michael got cut from varsity today. It broke my heart to see him cry. But I know this will make him stronger. Sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in pain. Michael read entry after entry. Mr. Whitlock had been at every important moment of his life. Every game, every graduation, every achievement. Always watching from the shadows. Always proud, but always hidden. One entry made Michael cry harder than all the rest. Age: 28. Michael's father, James, was killed today. I wanted to run to Michael and hold him like I did when he was a baby. I wanted to tell him that he still has a father who loves him. But James. Jordan was his real father. James earned that title through years of love and sacrifice. I'm just the man who gave him life. James gave him everything else. Near the end of the journal, Michael found an entry from just a few months ago. I'm dying, Michael. The cancer is winning. But I'm not sad. I got to watch my son become the greatest basketball player who ever lived. I got to see him grow into a good man, a loving husband, a wonderful father. I lived long enough to see all my dreams come true. The final entry was dated just 2 weeks ago. I had the dream again last night, the same dream I've had 3 times now. Michael finds the jersey in the pawn shop. He reads my letters. He discovers the truth about who I am. In the dream, he's not angry. He's not hurt. He understands why I did what I did. He forgives me for giving him away. And then he does. Something that makes me so proud, I wake up crying. What did Michael do in the dream? The entry continued. In the dream, Michael takes the silver charm and finds a young boy who got cut from his basketball team. He gives the boy the charm and tells him that someone believes in him. He becomes the secret father to another broken-hearted kid, just like I was his secret father. The circle continues. Love keeps getting passed down from one generation to the next. Michael looked around the small apartment. In the corner, he saw a box he hadn't noticed before. Inside the box was a videotape labeled, "For Michael, my final message." Michael found the old TV and VCR that Mr. Whitlock had set up. He put in the tape and pressed play. Mr. Whitlock's face appeared on the screen. He looked old and sick, but his eyes were still kind. "Hello, Michael," he said from the screen. "If you're watching this, then you found everything. You know the truth about who I am. I hope you can forgive an old man for keeping such a big secret." Michael sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his biological father's face. "I want you to know that giving you away was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the best thing I ever did. James and Dolores Jordan gave you a life I never could have given you. They made you the man you became." Mr. Whitlock paused and wiped tears from his eyes. "I also want you to know that watching you succeed was the greatest joy of my life. Every time you won a championship, every time you broke a record, every time you inspired someone to never give up, I felt like I had won too." The video was almost over, but Mr. Whitlock had one more thing to say. "Now, I need you to do something for me, son. I need you to find another kid who needs what I gave you. Find someone who got rejected, who thinks they're not good enough, who's ready to quit on their dreams. Give them the charm. Tell them someone believes in them. Be their secret father the way I was yours." The screen went dark. Michael sat in the silence of the small apartment, surrounded by a lifetime of love and secrets. He finally understood why Mr. Whitlock had left all of this for him to find. It wasn't just about revealing the truth. It was about passing on a John legacy, a legacy of believing in broken-hearted kids who needed someone to care about them. Michael picked up the silver charm and held it in his palm. It was time to find the next dreamer who needed it. But first, he had one more discovery to make. Michael was about to leave the storage unit when he noticed something strange. There was a loose floorboard under the desk where Mr. Whitlock had kept his journal. One corner of the board was sticking up just a little bit higher than the others. Michael knelt down and pried up the floorboard with his fingers. Underneath was a small metal box, about the size of a shoebox. The box was locked, but there was a tiny key taped to the bottom. Michael's hands shook as he opened the box. Inside were 3 things that would change everything he thought he knew about his life. The first thing was a stack of letters tied together with a blue ribbon. These letters were different from all the others. They weren't addressed to Michael. They were addressed to my beloved son and signed, Your mother, Sarah. Sarah? Michael's biological mother was named Sarah? Michael untied the ribbon and read the first letter. It was dated 1963, right after he was born. My dearest baby boy, I held you for 1 hour before I had to let you go. You were so perfect, so beautiful. I memorized every tiny finger, every little toe. I sang you a lullaby that my mother used to sing to me. I want you to know that giving you away was not about not loving you. It was about loving you so much that I wanted you to have a better life than I could give you. Michael's birth mother had written to him too, just like Mr. Whitlock had done. He read another letter, dated 1 year later. Happy first birthday, my sweet boy. I drove by your house today and saw you playing in the yard. You were walking now, taking little steps and falling down and getting back up. Your mother, Dolores, was watching you with such love in her eyes. I knew I had made the right choice. You have a real family now, a family that can give you everything I couldn't. There were dozens of letters from Sarah. She had written to Michael every year on his birthday. She had watched him grow up from far away, just like Mr. Whitlock had done. One letter from when Michael was in high school made him cry. I read in the newspaper that you got cut from your basketball team. My heart broke for you. I wanted to come to your school and tell the coach he was making a mistake. I wanted to hold you and tell you that you're going to be great someday. But that's not my job anymore. That's your real mother's job. All I can do is love you from far away and believe in your dreams. The letters continued through Michael's college years, his NBA career, his championships. Sarah had followed every moment of his life just like Mr. Whitlock had done. The last letter was dated just 3 months ago. My darling son, I'm writing this from the hospital. I have the same cancer that took your father. The doctors say I don't have much time left, but I'm not afraid to die. I got to watch my baby boy become a champion. I got to see you inspire millions of people around the world. I got to watch you become a wonderful father to your own children. My life was complete the day you were born. Everything else was just bonus time. Michael was sobbing now. His biological mother was dead. She had died just 3 months ago. He looked at the second item in the box. It was a small jewelry case. Inside was a simple gold locket. Michael opened the locket and found a tiny picture of himself as a baby. On the other side was a picture of a young woman with kind eyes and a beautiful smile. Sarah, his biological mother. Engraved on the back of the locket were the words, "Love never dies. It just changes address." The third item in the box was the most shocking of all. It was a death certificate. Sarah Collins, aged 54, died of cancer 3 weeks ago. But that wasn't what made Michael's heart stop. At the bottom of the death certificate was information about Sarah's possessions. It said that all of her belongings had been given to her sister, who lived in Wilmington. It listed the sister's name and address: Dorothy Kowalski, 1247 Maple Street. Kowalski. That name sounded familiar. Where had Michael heard it before? Then it hit him like lightning. Danny Kowalski, the man who owned the pawn shop. The man who sold Michael his old jersey. Danny Kowalski was Sarah's brother-in-law. That meant Sarah's sister was married to the pawn shop owner? Michael's mind raced. If Sarah's things went to her sister, and her sister was married to Danny Kowalski, then... The jersey. Sarah must have given the jersey to her sister before she died. Her sister must have taken it to the pawn shop to sell it. That's how Michael's jersey ended up hanging on the wall behind Danny's counter. But that meant Sarah knew Michael would find the jersey. She knew he would come to the pawn shop. She had planned this whole thing. Michael looked at the death certificate again. Sarah had died exactly 3 weeks ago, the same day Danny told him the jersey had been brought in. Sarah had made sure the jersey got to that pawn shop at exactly the right time. She had made sure Michael would find it when he came home to Wilmington. She had planned this entire journey from beyond the grave. Michael sat back on his heels, amazed by what he had discovered. Both of his biological parents had loved him from afar his entire life. Both of them had documented his journey. Both of them had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. And both of them had worked together, even after death, to bring him home and tell him the truth. But there was something else in the jewelry case. Something Michael had almost missed. Under the locket was a small folded piece of paper. Michael unfolded it and read, "Michael, if you're reading this, then Charles and I succeeded in our plan. We wanted you to know the truth about who you are and where you came from. But more importantly, we wanted you to understand your purpose. You are not just Michael Jordan, the basketball player. You are Michael Jordan, the hope giver. Find the next child who needs hope. Give them the charm. Tell them someone believes in them. Love them from afar, the way we loved you. Make the circle complete. With all our love, Charles and Sarah." Michael understood now. This wasn't just about him learning the truth about his biological parents. This was about him continuing their legacy. This was about him becoming the secret guardian angel for another child who needed someone to believe in them. Michael carefully put everything back in the box. He would treasure these letters and photos for the rest of his life. But first, he had a promise to keep. He had to find a child who needed the silver charm, a child who had been rejected, who thought their dreams were over, who needed someone to believe in them. As Michael locked up the storage unit and walked to his car, he had no idea that the perfect child was waiting for him just a few miles away. Michael sat in his car for a long time, thinking about everything he had learned. His whole life story had been rewritten in one night. The man and woman who gave him life had loved him from the shadows for 30 years. They had watched every game, celebrated every victory, and hurt with every loss. But now, they were both gone, and it was Michael's turn to be the guardian angel for someone else. Michael started his car and began driving through Wilmington. He didn't know where he was going. He just drove, hoping he would know the right child when he saw them. So he drove past the elementary school where he had learned to play basketball. Michael saw lights on in the gym. It was almost midnight. Who would be in the gym this late? Michael parked his car and walked to the window. Inside, he saw a young boy shooting baskets. By himself. The boy looked about 10 years old. He was small and skinny, wearing old sneakers that had holes in the sides. Every time he missed a shot, he would pick up the ball and try again. Something about the boy reminded Michael of himself at that age. The way he never gave up. The way he kept shooting even when he was all alone. The hungry look in his eyes. Michael walked around to the side door of the gym. It was unlocked. He pushed it open quietly and stepped inside. The boy didn't notice him at first. He was too focused on his shooting. Michael watched him take shot after shot. The boy wasn't very good yet, but he had heart. He had the same determination Michael remembered having when he was young. Finally, the boy noticed Michael standing in the doorway. His eyes got wide. Are you really Michael Jordan?" the boy asked in a whisper. "Yeah, I am," Michael said, walking onto the court. "What's your name?" "Marcus Williams," the boy said. "I can't believe Michael Jordan is in my gym." "What are you doing here so late, Marcus?" The boy's face fell. He looked down at his shoes. "I got cut from the team today. The coach said I was too small. He said I should try a different sport." Michael's heart ached. This was exactly what Mr. Whitlock and Sarah had wanted him to find. A boy who had been rejected. A boy who thought his dreams were over. "How did you get in here?" Michael asked. "My mom works for the school district. She cleans the buildings at night. She said I could come with her tonight and practice while she worked. She feels bad that I got cut." Michael looked around the gym. In the corner, he saw a woman mopping the floor. She was wearing a uniform just like Mr. Whitlock used to wear. She was watching Marcus with the same loving eyes that Mr. Whitlock had used to watch Michael. "Marcus, can I tell you something?" Michael said, sitting down on the bleachers. "Sure." Marcus ran over and sat next to him. "When I was 15 years old, I got cut from my high school basketball team." Marcus's eyes got wide. "You did? But you're Michael Jordan." "I am now. But back then, I was just a skinny kid who thought his dreams were over. I cried for hours when I saw that my name wasn't on the list." "What did you do?" "I practiced harder than anyone had ever practiced before. I used that rejection as fuel to get better. And you know what? Getting cut from that team was the best thing that ever happened to me." "How?" Michael smiled. "Because it taught me that setbacks are just setups for comebacks. It taught me that when someone tells you no, it just means you have to work harder to prove them wrong." Marcus was listening with his whole body, leaning forward and hanging on every word. "Marcus, I want to give you something," Michael said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver charm. "This belonged to a very special man. He believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. He taught me that stars are born in empty gyms." Michael held out the charm. "I want you to have this." I can't take that, Marcus said. It must be worth a lot of money. It's not worth money, Marcus. It's worth something much more valuable. It's worth hope. It's worth believing in yourself when nobody else does. Michael put the charm in Marcus's small hand. This charm has been carried by dreamers for 4 generations. Each person who carried it went on to do amazing things. Not because the charm was magic, but because someone believed in them. Marcus stared at the charm like it was made of gold. What do I do with it? You carry it with you, and every time you want to quit, every time someone tells you you're not good enough, you hold this charm and remember that someone believes in you. Remember that rejection is just redirection towards something better. Tears started forming in Marcus's eyes. Do you really think I can be good at basketball? Michael put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Marcus, I think you can be anything you want to be, but it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to work harder than the kids who are naturally bigger and stronger. You're going to have to practice when everyone else is sleeping. You're going to have to believe in yourself when nobody else does. I can do that, Marcus said, clutching the charm tight in his fist. I know you can. And you know what? I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be cheering for you. From far away, just like someone did for me. Michael stood up and started to walk away, but Marcus called after him. Mr. Jordan, what if I fail? What if I'm never good enough? Michael turned around and smiled. Marcus, the only way you fail is if you quit. As long as you keep trying, as long as you keep believing, you can never fail. Remember that. As Michael walked toward the door, he heard Marcus start, dribbling again. The boy was already back to practicing, but now he had something he didn't have before. He had hope. He had someone who believed in him. Michael walked over to Marcus's mother, who was still mopping in the corner. Your son is special, Michael told her. He has something that can't be taught. He has heart. The woman smiled through tears. Thank you for believing in him. He's been so sad since he got cut from the team. Tell him to keep practicing. Tell him that someone is watching and cheering for him. And tell him that getting cut today might be the best thing that ever happens to him. As Michael walked to his car, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt the same peace and joy that Mr. Whitlock must have felt when he watched Michael practice all those years ago. The circle was complete. The charm had found its new home. And somewhere in heaven, Charles Whitlock and Sarah Collins were smiling, knowing that their love would continue to flow from one generation to the next. Michael drove away from the school, but he would never forget Marcus Williams. He would follow the boy's career from afar, just like his biological parents had followed his. He would be the secret guardian angel that every dreamer needs. And someday, when Marcus was older and more successful, he would pass the charm on to another broken-hearted kid who needed someone to believe in them. The legacy would never end. Love never dies. It just changes address. Michael sat in his car outside the school, watching Marcus through the gym window. The boy was still practicing, but now there was something different about him. He stood taller. He shot. With more confidence. He had hope. Michael pulled out his phone and called his mother. Dolores Jordan answered on the second ring. Michael? Honey? It's almost 1 a.m. Are you okay? Mom, I need to ask you something. and I need you to tell me the truth." There was a pause. Then his mother said quietly, "You found out about Charles, didn't you?" Michael's heart skipped a beat. "You knew? You've always known?" "Yes, baby. Your daddy and I have always known. Charles contacted us when you were in high school. He told us who he was. He asked permission to be part of your life as the school janitor." Michael felt tears starting in his eyes again. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because Charles made us promise to let him tell you himself, when the time was right," he said. "Someday, you would need to know the truth, but only when you were ready to understand it. Weren't you angry? Weren't you worried I would love him more than you?" His mother laughed softly. "Oh, honey, love isn't a pie that gets smaller when you share it. Love grows bigger when more people care about you. Charles loving you didn't take anything away from our love. It just meant you had more people believing in you." Michael wiped his eyes. "Did you know about Sarah, too?" "Sarah Collins?" "Yes, we knew about her. She sent us a letter every year on your birthday. She always thanked us for loving you and raising you. She never tried to interfere. She just wanted to know that you were happy and healthy." "She's dead, Mom. She died 3 weeks ago." "I know, baby. Charles called us before he died and told us about their plan. He said they wanted you to know the truth about where you came from. They wanted you to understand that you were never unwanted. You were loved by more people than you ever knew." Michael looked back at the gym where Marcus was still practicing. "Mom, I just gave Charles's charm to a little boy who got cut from his basketball team." "Good," his mother said. "That's exactly what Charles would have wanted you to do." "But I don't understand something. How did Charles and Sarah know I would come back to Wilmington? How did they know I would find the jersey?" His mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Michael, there are some things in this world that can't be explained. Sometimes people who love us can see things that we can't see. Charles always said he had dreams about your future. Maybe love gives us the power to see what's coming. Do you think they're watching me now?" "I think love never really dies, Michael. I think it just finds new ways to work in the world. Charles and Sarah are gone, but their love for you is still alive. It's alive in that little boy you just helped. It's alive in every person you inspire to never give up." Michael looked up at the stars through his car window. "I miss them, Mom, and I never even got to know them." "But you did know them, honey. You knew Charles for years. He was the janitor who believed in you. He was the man who told you that stars are born in empty gyms. You knew the most important part of him, his heart." "What about Sarah?" "You knew her too, Michael. You knew her every time you felt like someone was watching over you during big games. You knew her every time you felt love that you couldn't explain. You knew her in your heart, even if you didn't know her name." Michael thought about all the times during his career when he had felt like invisible hands were guiding him. All the times he had pointed to the sky after big shots, feeling like someone up there was cheering for him. "Mom, can I ask you one more thing?" "Anything, baby." "Are you angry that Charles and Sarah wanted me to know the truth? Are you hurt that they're my biological parents?" His mother's voice was strong and clear. "Michael Jeffrey Jordan, you listen to me. Your daddy and I are your real parents. We're the ones who walked you to your first day of school. We're the ones who stayed up all night when you were sick. We're the ones who cheered at every game and helped you with homework and taught you right from wrong." She continued, "Charles and Sarah gave you life, and we are grateful to them for that gift. But we gave you everything else. We are your family. Nothing will ever change that. I love you, Mom." "I love you too, baby. Now go home and get some sleep. You've had a long night." Michael hung up the phone and looked back at the gym one more time. Marcus was finally finishing his practice. His mother was done cleaning and was waiting for him by the door. As they walked out together, Michael saw Marcus show his mother the silver charm. He saw the woman's face light up with hope and pride. He saw her hug her son and tell him that everything was going to be okay. Michael smiled through his tears. This was what Mr. Whitlock had wanted. This was what Sarah had dreamed of. A broken-hearted kid who now had someone to believe in him. A mother who had hope for her son's future. A charm that would remind them both that dreams don't have expiration dates. Michael started his car and drove toward his hotel. But as he drove, he made a mental note to call his foundation in the morning. He wanted to set up a scholarship fund for kids like Marcus. Kids who got cut from teams, but never gave up on their dreams. He would call it the Charles Whitlock and Sarah Collins Foundation, a way to honor his biological parents and help other children at the same time. Michael also decided he would quietly follow Marcus's basketball career. He would make sure the boy had good coaches and equipment. He would be the secret guardian, angel that every dreamer needs, just like Charles had been for him. And someday, when Marcus was older and had achieved his own dreams, Michael would tell him the story of the charm. He would tell him about Charles Whitlock and Sarah Collins. He would tell him about love that never dies and hope that gets passed from one generation to the next. The circle would continue. The legacy would live on. And somewhere in heaven, two people who had loved Michael from the very beginning were smiling with pride. Their son had learned the most important lesson of all. The greatest victory in life is not winning championships. The greatest victory is helping someone else believe in their dreams. 3 months later, Michael stood at the edge of Willow Creek Cemetery, holding a bouquet of white roses. He walked slowly to Charles Whitlock's grave, where he had stood that night when everything changed. The headstone looked different now. Someone had added new words beneath Charles's name. Loving Father and Guardian Angel. Next to Charles's grave was a new headstone that read, Sarah Collins, 1969-2023. Beloved Mother. Love never dies, it just changes address. Michael placed half the roses on each grave. I wanted to tell you both something, he said, quietly. Marcus made his middle school team last week. He's the starting point guard. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above him, and Michael smiled. He liked to think that was Charles and Sarah cheering. He still carries the charm with him to every game. His mother told me he holds it tight before every free throw. She said he whispers, "Someone believes in me," every time. Michael sat down on the grass between the two graves. I've been thinking a lot about what you taught me, about how rejection can become redirection, about how the worst day of your life can lead to the best days of your life. He pulled out his phone and showed the headstones a picture. This is Marcus at his first game. Look at his face. Do you see that fire in his eyes? That's the same fire you saw in me when I was his age. Michael had kept his promise to watch over Marcus from afar. He had quietly arranged for the boy to get new basketball shoes when his old ones fell apart. He had made sure Marcus got invited to the best summer basketball camps. He had even arranged for a college scout to accidentally be at one of Marcus's games, but Marcus didn't know any of this, just like Michael hadn't known about Charles and Sarah watching over him. "I started the foundation," Michael continued, "the Charles Whitlock and Sarah Collins Foundation for Young Dreamers. We've already helped 50 kids who got cut from their teams. We give them equipment, coaching, and most importantly, hope." Michael looked at Sarah's headstone. "I met your sister Dorothy last week. She told me you used to practice basketball in your backyard when you were young. She said you dreamed of playing professionally, but girls weren't allowed to play back then. She said you would have been proud to know your son made it to the top." A small sparrow landed on Charles's headstone and began to chirp. Michael laughed. "Charles, I think that's you telling me you're proud too." "You know what the best part is?" Michael continued. "Marcus doesn't just want to be a basketball player. He wants to help other kids who get rejected. He already talks about starting his own foundation someday. The circle is already getting bigger." Michael stood up and brushed the grass off his pants. "I have to go now. Marcus has a championship game tonight, and I promised I'd be there. I'll be sitting in the back row, wearing sunglasses, just like you used to do." As Michael walked toward his car, he heard voices calling his name. He turned around and saw a group of children running toward him. They were all wearing basketball jerseys and carrying basketballs. "Mr. Jordan! Mr. Jordan!" called a young girl. "We heard you were here. We're from the Charles Whitlock Community Center. We just finished our practice." Michael looked confused. "The Charles Whitlock Community Center?" "Yeah," said a young boy. "It's the new basketball center that opened last month. They have pictures of you and Mr. Whitlock everywhere. They told us Mr. Whitlock used to believe in kids who got cut from teams." Michael's heart swelled with pride. The community had honored Charles by naming a basketball center after him. Kids were learning his story and carrying on his legacy. "Can you sign our basketballs?" asked another child. "Of course," Michael said, pulling out a pen. As he signed each ball, he asked the raw kids about their dreams. Each one had a story of rejection, of being told they weren't good enough, of wanting to prove everyone wrong. "Remember," Michael told them as he signed the last basketball, "stars are born in empty gyms, and there's always someone watching who believes in you even when you can't see them." The children ran back toward the community center, dribbling their basketballs and chattering excitedly about meeting Michael Jordan. Michael got in his car and drove toward Marcus's school. As he drove, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. Finding the jersey in the pawn shop seemed like a lifetime ago. Learning about Charles and Sarah had changed everything he thought he knew about love and family. But the most important thing he had learned was this: love is not something you keep. Love is something you pass on. When Michael arrived at the school, he parked in the back row of the gym and put on his sunglasses. The game was about to start. Marcus was warming up with his team, and Michael could see the silver charm hanging from a chain around the boy's neck. During the game, every time Marcus made a good play, he would touch the charm and point to the sky. Michael smiled, remembering how he used to do the same thing during his NBA career. He had always felt like someone was watching and cheering for him. Now he knew who it was. With 2 minutes left in the game, Marcus's team was down by 1 point. The coach called a timeout and put his arm around Marcus. "This is your moment," Michael heard him say. "Show them what you're made of." Marcus nodded and looked up at the stands. For just a moment, his eyes met Michael's. Marcus smiled and touched his charm. Then he ran back onto the court. With 10 seconds left, Marcus stole the ball and drove to the basket. As he went up for the winning shot, time seemed to slow down. Michael held his breath, just like Charles and Sarah must have done during his games. The ball swished through the net as the buzzer sounded. Marcus's teammates mobbed him, as the crowd went crazy. But Marcus looked up at the ceiling and pointed to the sky, just like Michael used to do. "Thank you," Marcus whispered, touching his charm. Michael wiped tears from his eyes. In that moment, he felt Charles and Sarah's presence so strongly it was like they were sitting right next to him. He felt their pride, their joy, their love flowing through him and into Marcus and all the other kids they would help in the future. The circle was complete. The legacy would continue, and love would never die. It would just keep changing address from one dreamer to the next, forever and always. As Michael drove home that night, he made one final promise to Charles and Sarah. He would spend the rest of his life making sure that no child who got rejected would ever have to face it alone. There would always be someone watching, someone believing, someone loving them from afar. Because that's what real champions do. They don't just win for themselves. They win for everyone who needs hope. And hope, like love, never dies. It just gets passed along to the next dreamer who needs it most. And that's how Michael Jordan learned the most important lesson of all, that the greatest victory isn't winning championships. It's helping someone else believe in their dreams. Just like Charles and Sarah believed in Michael from the shadows, there might be someone believing in you right now, someone watching over you, cheering for your success, even when you can't see them. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell us your city or country. Are you listening from New York? Maybe Tokyo? Or somewhere else entirely? We love hearing from our amazing listeners around the world. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that rejection is just redirection, please hit that like button. It helps us spread these messages of hope and kindness to more people who need to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. When you subscribe, you're helping us reach more people with stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all that dreams never have expiration dates. Speaking of dreams and never giving up, there's another incredible story waiting for you right on your screen. Click on that video appearing right now. It's about someone else who turned their biggest failure into their greatest success. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until next time, remember, stars are born in empty gyms, and someone out there believes in you, even when you can't believe in yourself. Keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep spreading kindness wherever you go.